Okay, hello everyone. I'm gonna start and Joe will continue. So it looks like yesterday was a good day. We learned that our paper will be published in the it's critical studies in terrorism. So we focused on the notion of non-radicalization, and we focused on a case study from Turkey, which is the Gülen movement. I'll provide some information, but basically the research question is related to the idea that Gülen movement was once a peaceful movement, and for many people it still is, but by the Turkish government it was declared as a terrorist organization, and then there has been a lot of victimization of its members, but we see no radicalization, no sign of radicalization or resort to violence within this group. So I'll provide you some background information, but before that I should credit our other co-authors, Alper Sozer from Roger Williams University and Niyazi Ekici from Western Illinois University. So it was a collaborative effort. So the Gülen movement, they describe themselves as a social civil movement, society movement, which focuses on education, spirituality, peace, and interfaith dialogue. They have over 1,000 schools and universities around the world, numerous media outlets, professional associations, and business enterprises. And many people can't decide what the movement is. Is it a religious movement, social movement, or political? And we believe it's a combination of both. And we don't have time to go into detail, but it has a lot of important ramifications to understand this group. And the gentleman in all these pictures is the leader of the movement, Fethullah Gülen. He's residing in Pennsylvania now. And as the photos suggest, this person and his movement was once very respected movement and person, because in the pictures you see former prime ministers, former presidents, current president, and the Pope. But something happened around 2010, and the relationship between Erdogan government and the movement started to fall out. I spent 2 hours for this cool looking thing. So I'm not going to go into detail, but the items in the bottom are seen as the actions of the government against the movement, and the top ones are the responses of the movement to the government. But the most important ones are 2003 corruption allegations, when Prime Minister Erdogan thought there was a civilian coup against him by the members of this movement. And in 2016, there was a military coup attempt. It was, many people believe that it was a staged coup, just like the Hitler's, I don't know how you pronounce, but Reichstag fire, to get rid of all the Gülenists from the government and society. So those two are the most important events to understand what's going on. And the ramifications of these two events is, after 2013, the discourse, Erdogan's discourse against the movement changed, and then you see all this hate speech, and they were the main motives of his pep talks during the elections. And as his top-down approach to the movement changed, and then it trickled down to society, and many people started to think about the Gülen movement in a negative way. And this is the Turkey's post-2016 coup crackdown. So after the coup attempt, the government started to clamp down on the movement. You see these numbers, but these are from 2022, because we couldn't find reliable numbers. But even these numbers, I think, are telling, because thousands of people were dismissed, investigated, arrested. Many schools and dormitories have been closed. Academics and journalists lost their jobs. Judges, prosecutors, police officers, they all lost their jobs. They were imprisoned. And there are many people who are still in prison, and there are many people who have been tortured, and other people who lost their lives when they were escaping from Turkey. So within this mindset, we thought that these people are suffering so much, but there is no sign of radicalization. So we want to understand, and this is the study population. So we interviewed 15 people, And if you look at the profiles, they are like interesting because the education level is very high. They all have undergrad degrees. Some of them have masters and PhDs. We even have some associate professors among them. I think I'll stop here and then give the floor to Joe to talk about the findings, and I'll come back to conclude.
Brilliant. So the first thing that we wanted to do, do I need to go again for the animation? There you go. Is to almost make the case for why this group we should be some kind of a concern when it comes to kind of radicalization theory and the kind of push and pull factors that are kind of very prevalent within the literature. So what we find is that there was widespread reporting of human rights violations. I think I'll get this one at a time. So we talk about people talk about having been subject to kind of extreme abuse when in prison. I won't read out the long quote, but people talking about being beaten and people talking about being blindfolded and people being told that they were going to be killed and things like that. So really repressive human rights violations. Almost everyone, I think everyone involved in the study was forced to migrate as well, so they became refugees in other countries and kind of being kind of expelled from their homeland. And as Kamil explained, individuals lost their jobs, sometimes jobs with extremely kind of high status, high social capital as well. And then in terms of the different kind of push factors that were involved, they were subject to kind of extreme demonization as a group being part of this movement. Actually, another study that Kamil's done on hate speech as well kind of demonstrates this kind of via social media analysis in a more quantitative way, so they complement each other quite well in this regard. And as a result, kind of suffered kind of very high levels of discrimination and stigmatization, again, within the country in which they grew up and kind of have a lot of kind of social ties. So I think, if you kind of were to read a lot about radicalization theory and things like that, you might think that this confluence of factors would present a risk and a range of different risks. But as Kamil said, there is currently no real reason to think that this group has any kind of violent ideation or putting it into action in any way. So we also asked them about kind of why that wasn't the case. And the first thing, and Kamil will probably explain his myth doctrine in a little bit more detail, perhaps more in the Q&A if we've got time. But to put it very simply, it is an ideology which they talked as acting as a protective factor, an ideology which specifically disavows violence as well, and that's really fundamentally important. Regardless of which kind of radicalization theory you're talking about, almost all of them rely on some kind of adherence to an ideology which says that violence is either permissible or in some instances mandatory. But this ideology specifically disavows it. A lot of individuals spoke about their religious beliefs as well, and I think this is particularly important. Religious beliefs obviously very well covered in the radicalization literature as a risk factor, but in the right circumstances can act as a protective factor as well. And then people would often talk about individual personality traits, things that they were very kind of deeply important to them, whether it was kind of a belief in pacifism as being the appropriate way forward, or altruism, even in the face of enemies that have made them suffer to kind of extreme levels. And then there was a whole host of different kind of human social capital natures as well. So talking about bonding within the community that they're part of. And then this happened, importantly, both kind of very long-standing, pre-existing offline social networks, as well as online social networks. And again, important to remember, these are people that have become refugees all around the world, but these kind of online networks act as very kind of useful buffers to help them stay in contact with people that they knew. And again, won't read the whole quote here, but people talking about things like the idea of non-violence being embedded in their DNA, and that this was really fundamentally kind of in the nature of the ideology to which they adhered. Why is that? Yeah, very good. So the last one from me is we wanted to, again, just place this on kind of several different layers and kind of mirroring what you might think about as different levels of radicalization too. So everything from and it's probably a little bit small to read, but everything from that kind of micro level and those personality predispositions and things like that to the kind of local environmental levels, going all the way up to the kind of macro level factors. And I think really importantly, it is very often something which a lot of the factors are factors that could also exist within radicalization protective factors. If you think about individual predispositions, the importance of social capital, and a lot of these things in a completely different circumstance can act as protective factors too. So I'll pass back to Kamil.
Thank you. So some key takeaways, and I think, yeah, we are doing good with time. So the first one is, as you can see within this slide, is the understanding non-radicalization has to do with the combination of different factors. It's just like understanding radicalization. It's not just one factor which is contributing, but it's a combination of different factors. And another key takeaway is that FETÖ, actually it's my fault, I didn't mention the word FETÖ. FETÖ means Fethullahist terrorist organization. Obviously the group members do not accept this, but this is the label that the government put on top of the this group and the members. And FETÖ actually became a hate word in Turkey. It has a very pejorative meaning. And as Joe mentioned, I published an article on this issue, whether hate speech is predicting engagement on social media, using the FETÖ as a case example, and I found that it was the case. So it's a constructed term. We don't believe it's a terrorist organization. That's why we should, as terrorism researchers, start to think about the effects of state-led extremism on individuals or groups, because we tend to focus more on the non-state actors when it comes to producing violence or extremism, but I think it's time for us to focus more. Of course we are focusing, but we should focus more on the effects of the state-led extremism, and there are many examples around the world, like in Russia, in Myanmar and other places. And these people are resilient, our informants and participants, despite significant suffering. And we believe it requires a future cross-cultural study, because this phenomenon exists. Like some people say, so what? There are many people who are living under the enabling environments, but they are not violent. But we believe it's not the case. It shouldn't prevent us from studying and understanding why these people or why certain people are not becoming radicalized. And I'm very happy to see that many people start to think in this way. They are doing research, and an example of cross-cultural study, maybe, or cross-cultural effort will be taken tomorrow. So it's a pitch for our workshop. There will be a workshop on non-radicalization at the Singleton campus. If you would like to attend, we still have a few seats as an observer. So we are going to have some brilliant minds like Kurt Braddock and other brilliant minds, some of whom are within this room. So I urge you to contact with me if you are interested to attend this workshop. So I think I should end there. Thank you for listening.